How's it going, guys? Welcome to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege, bringing you guys another round of stories around the NFL and in football in general. It's the off-season, but it's still a lot of stuff to get into. On today's show, I want to discuss Dak's newest contract details, in which there seems to be reports that it seems to be developing in a way that it could lead to no contract extension this offseason. Later in the show, I also want to talk about the Commanders' interest in J.J.McCarthy, potentially at that number 2 pick, so stick around for that, as well as going over a deeper look into the Broncos' offseason thus far, because a lot has been said about them and Russell Wilson, but where do they stand right now? What are their next plans of actions? All that stuff coming up on today's episode. Before I jump into the first segment, I want to remind you guys to follow, like, and subscribe to the show on both YouTube channels and all throughout our social medias, as well as reminding you guys, if you have any questions or comments you want to make during the show, to use the tip and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net with any of those. By using the link, I'm able to see your question pop up here to the right of me in the chat box. I'm able to answer those questions on air and just interact with you guys. It makes it more fun for me. I think it's a big help for the show and all the shows across the network. We always send a big thank you to you guys anytime you guys are able to use that link. Once again, it's gsmcpodcast.net. And in saying that, I'll jump into the first segment of the show around the Bears. Not what they do with the number 1 overall pick, because that's all the news that's coming out. All the speculation is surrounding that number 1 pick and how that starts off the draft. I want to talk about their number 9 pick. A lot of people that really aren't too familiar with the draft, they know it's coming, but aren't really engaged with it as much, might not know that the Bears have 2 first-round picks inside the top 10. That in and of itself is huge, right? That's a big deal, and rightly so. Up till now, everything's been focused on the number 1 pick, Caleb Williams, finding that franchise quarterback. It all seems to be wraps right now, right? That Caleb Williams is going to be that guy, going to be picked number 1 overall. But they still have a very valuable number 9 pick that's sitting there, and I think it still holds a lot of value, like I mentioned, because before they made some of the moves to, trade Justin Fields, bring in Keenan Allen, as well as DeAndre Swift, and all those players that they brought in, the number 9 pick held a lot more importance to me, of value, if I were the Bears, because I thought a lot of mock drafts had them selecting another wide receiver, some sort of playmaker just there, because you wanted to have someone there to help Caleb Williams as much as possible. And now you bring in Keenan Allen, pair him up with DJ Moore. Like I mentioned, DeAndre Swift is there now. This offense is really looking very promising with a lot of potential, but it all rests on the shoulders of Caleb Williams, right? So with this number 9 pick, now you can, I think, venture out a little bit more with this pick and start looking maybe on the other side of the ball. Matt Eberflus is a defensive-minded coach. He comes from a defensive background, so it would make sense that now he's kind of given a bit more leeway to look into that side. Maybe we need a pass rusher now. We could go after that, because ever since they lost Khalil Mack, it's not really been there. They have options there. Most mock drafts, and I believe that we won't see a pass rusher really until the 8th or really the 8th pick with the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think the Tennessee Titans will go edge rusher. So if you want to get someone to go after the quarterback, or just someone on the defensive side of the ball, really, most people have offensive players going in the top 7, really. It's all jam-packed with receivers, only 1 offensive tackle, really, quarterbacks, and those sort of players. You don't really see defense be touched on or talked about until you get to the Atlanta Falcons. People have them drafting Dallas Turner, but the Bears are right there, basically at that same spot. They could get him if the Falcons don't want him. Jared Verse is another option. You could go offensive tackle, which, again, doesn't hurt on the offensive side to protect Caleb Williams. You have Olumuyiwa Fashanu from Penn State. Talise Fuaga from Oklahoma State. You have still some good options there. It might be a little bit too early for Fuaga and Fashanu, but those are the best options other than Joe Alt, because a lot of people have the Tennessee Titans drafting him at number 7, so he might be just out of your reach, but you still have some options there, is what I'm trying to say. With this 9 pick, that is very interesting because they asked Ryan Poles about it, and he kind of gave a breakdown of how he's attacking this problem and how he's attacking the situation with the rest of his team. He said at the NFL coaches meeting, we're going to do some cool things. When we get back, kind of break into teams. One team is going to talk about the tackle position is the best to go after, the wide receiver is the best, the defensive end is the best, and use the factual information to kind of spit that out, and we'll have a debate in terms of what's more impactful for our football team. They also asked Matt Eberflus about it, and he was a bit more, sarcastic about it, a bit more funny about it when he said with the number 9 pick, they're going to use it to either help the quarterback or go after the quarterback. Or no, he said go affect the quarterback. We're going to draft someone to affect the quarterback or help the quarterback. A non-answer. Basically, all the positions either help or affect the quarterback on defense. So, same mindset, not giving too much away, which is smart, I guess, but Ryan Poles really broke it down a bit more and how they're going to really diagnose this whole situation with the number 9 pick. And with that, the biggest theme, if you watch these episodes with me, is that I'm a sucker for trading back. Gathering more capital, having more options to draft and improve this team. The Bears have done that already without trading too much. But with the number 9 pick, if you're not going to trade the 1 because before you were supposed to keep Justin Fields or that was an idea, now you're going to get Caleb Williams. You're really dead set on him, it seems. With the 9 pick, you still have teams, sneaky teams that aren't really talked about too much right now, that want to move up draft boards and want to move up the pecking order and get players that they really like at that spot. Say nobody trades into the top 4 and gets J.J. McCarthy. You get Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams go top 3. Then you have the receivers, most likely go to the next 3 all the way to the Giants. The Tennessee Titans don't really need a quarterback. The Falcons definitely don't with the contract they gave to Kirk Cousins. Then you have the number 9 pick, and you have the Vikings sitting there, salivating right there, waiting to move up. The Raiders are also right there. The Broncos, not to mention as well. I'll get into them a little bit after the break. Those 3 teams are just waiting for that chance, anticipating nobody to take their guy and jump up draft boards. So that number 9 pick is still very valuable for those teams sitting in the 11th through, I would say, 16 range if some of those teams really want to move up. So it still holds value, and I would really look and entertain a lot of options to try and trade that pick, because the biggest thing for me that I didn't know and I found out about while I was doing these notes and the research for this is that the Bears only have 4 picks in the entire draft. They have 1, they have number 9. They don't have a second-round pick because they traded that to the Commanders for Montez Sweat, and you don't have a fourth-round pick for this year's draft because they traded it for Keenan Allen. So they have 1, 9, 75, and 122. That's it in this year's draft. They've accumulated more down the road, but with only 4 picks in this draft, you want to get the best bang for your buck with Caleb Williams and show everybody that this plan is working right away. And by doing so, I don't think 4 picks is going to do it to justify your whole plan, at least in the first year. I'm not saying they have to go, they have to get over 10 wins or something like that, but showing that Caleb Williams is progressing is showing good promise and great potential, good connection with these receivers. I think adding more draft capital will give you a greater chance to do that. So my advice to them would be trading that pick to some of these teams that would love to move up for quarterbacks or maybe for other positions, offensive tackle, if that's something that people want to do, or other wide receivers as well, depending on how the draft board lines up. You don't really know. I think if I'm the Bears, I'm really listening to options at number 9. Ryan Poles said that it's still an option to trade as well. But, it all depends on the compensation that they get back for the pick. But, 4 picks in this draft isn't really a lot. And on that topic, to sort of wrap this up and kind of think long term with the Chicago Bears, Ryan Poles stressed at the owners' meeting, at the coaches' meeting, that if they only end up with the 4 picks and don't gain more draft capital, he urges and stressed the point that he wants the fans and people evaluating them on how this project is going to remember that they have a long-term vision for this. It's not do or die in this season just with Caleb Williams and the 4 draft picks they accumulate in this year's draft. They want to make sure everybody knows that, think long-term. This is going past this season, down 2-3 seasons, hopefully, if they're still around, right? In all honesty, but I believe they will be. I've grown more and more confident with what Ryan Poles has been doing, and I'm keeping that in mind, and he stressed, and I wanted to make sure I brought that up, that he stressed people just remember that, this is a long-term thing that they want to build and build on, not just after this draft, and maybe if they get fired, forget about it and throw it out. The Chicago Bears have done that enough, and he's the one trying to change that. He mentioned coming in, trying to break a cycle. I think he's taken the right steps to do that. It's just about convincing everybody else that to really buy into this and have trust in them, because it is hard. I do understand it is hard to trust something that really hasn't worked over and over again. But I think Ryan Poles has done the most so far out of any past upstairs members, organizational members that the Bears have had. I think he's been the most proactive, the most aggressive, and I like what he's doing. I have confidence in him for what it's worth for the Chicago Bears. I like what they're doing, and I'm excited to see what they produce out there on the field with Caleb Williams and everybody else they bring in this season. So that'll be it for that and that segment. Very interesting to talk about that number 9 pick because, like I mentioned, not a lot of people are talking about it and how much value it has in this year's draft. But I will leave that there. I'm going to go to the first break of the show, and on the other side of it, I'm going to talk more about the Broncos offseason this year because no one's really talking about it, what they do, what the next steps are, as well as J.J.McCarthy and his percentage of going to the Commanders, as well as Dak's contract situation. So all of that still to come on today's episode. You're watching the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up in the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Getting my way into be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the losing fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Diving into the second segment of the show, the Broncos offseason this year, or what it has been so far this year. A bunch of crickets, in all honesty, in terms of improving this team and trying to see something different out there. The way it ended last year, all the off-the-field comments and action shown by Sean Payton, Russell Wilson, and all of that talk about how they benched him for not renegotiating his contract and renegotiating that injury clause in his contract. It all got really messy, and it all brought it away from football and discussing football. And it just left people with a bad taste in their mouth, quite honestly. And the offseason for a bunch of teams that we've seen already is a chance to, start something new, turn the page, forget about everything. But it's hard to do that with the Denver Broncos because of all the decisions that they've made and that they have already made in free agency that hasn't added to their team, but really taken away from it now. And now they stand in a weird place, in my opinion, looking at this team, looking at this roster where you have some good, you have some promise, but you have things weighing you down that don't allow some of their great players like Pat Surtain, Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton had a great end of the year last year. These players are great, have a lot of talent, they have shown promising moments, but it seems like everything else is just weighing them down. Like I mentioned, there's always another hurdle in their way to show what they're really about. And like I mentioned, it's been a quiet offseason so far for the Broncos. They've lost really more than they've brought in. Jerry Jeudy was traded to the Browns. They released Justin Simmons because of the salary cap situation that they're in. Russell Wilson was obviously let go. Now he's with the Steelers on a veteran minimum. But in saying that, they're still paying most of Russell Wilson's salary. $39 million of his contract hit is still with the Denver Broncos, and they have that $85 million dead cap hit money that they have to pay off over the next probably 2 years, I would say. So really binded to Russell Wilson's contract still, and I just don't see them really doing too much because of that. Again, that was a decision that they made, similar to the Cleveland Browns this offseason, extending Jerry Jeudy without really showing what he can do, where in his development he is. The Broncos did the same thing with Russell Wilson, extended him before the season to a crazy contract, and it all really blew up in their face. Now they're paying the repercussions of that, and it's hard to add any players when they have all this other responsibility to pay off this dead money. But they have been able to add Brandon Jones, the defensive back, Malcolm Roach on the defensive line, Cody Barton as a linebacker. They're solid pieces to add. A lot of teams have made signings like that. But the biggest thing still remains is that quarterback position. Right now, it's sitting at Jarrett Stidham. But even Sean Payton couldn't really hide the fact that you have to have one of the top, at least one of the top 12 guys to give yourself a chance in this league. The talent level just keeps growing. Everybody has talent all over their roster. It's how they use it. And some of them just have great players, generational type players that win them games that they're not really supposed to win, keep them in games that they're really not supposed to stay in. These kind of players are what's lacking in the Denver Broncos roster right now. And to that, Sean Payton said on the quarterback not having one of the top premier guys, he said, we better. In this league, which is very competitive in our division, it's vital to have one of those top quarterbacks. And on the quarterback topic, they haven't had a steady quarterback that they felt confident about since Peyton Manning, in all honesty. They've rotated through a ton of quarterbacks in that time and have handed out some bad contracts as well, quite frankly. Obviously, the one to Russell Wilson, and when they paid Brock Osweiler all that money as well. He lasted a couple years, but other than that, it's more of the same with the Denver Broncos and their quarterback situation. Now, you think, okay, free agency hasn't really worked. They don't have a lot of money to really work with, sign some of the top tier guys. What about the draft? Well, in the draft, they do have the 12th pick, which is great. They sit in a very favorable spot to really address all the situations, ironically, except quarterback, because if they stay at 12, you're really not going to get one of those game-changing, dynamic quarterbacks that I just mentioned. It's presumed that J.J.McCarthy, Drake May, Caleb, obviously, and Jaden Daniels are all going to be gone within the top 5. At 12, you could stick with and wait out for a Bo Nix, Michael Penix, maybe, if you want to take a risk on him. A lot of people don't have first-round grades on him as of now. Bo Nix, I am a fan of Bo Nix. There's nothing really too bad to say about Bo Nix, but I just don't think he brings that same sort of special dynamic change that those other guys bring, mostly because he's spent a lot of time in college, and when you're getting a player through the draft, you hope to develop him, find that special talent that he has, or special trait, I should say, and mold him into this great quarterback that you can have for years and years. But because he's spent about 5 or 4 years in college now, he's about 24 years old. He's older than some quarterbacks probably now in this in the NFL. And you wonder how much more can you really develop a 24-year-old that spent so much time in college, getting to the NFL. How much more room do you have until you smack yourself against his ceiling? So that's really the biggest question with him. Do you want to spend a draft pick on Bo Nix and hope that there is something left in the tank with him? Or do you go somewhere else and then you still have to pay that burden of not having a top-tier quarterback on your roster? Sean Payton has mentioned the idea of trading up, but when he did say that, it made me think, you don't have already too many players on your roster that you can offer up. You don't have a lot of draft capital really in this year's draft to offer up as well. I don't know what makes them think, or how much do they even plan on investing in trading up significantly in this draft as well. If you want to jump up to 4 minimum, you got to jump up 8 spots, and at that point you're really giving up a lot on an already very low quality and quantity roster. If you invest so much in the now, how much better is that going to pan out for you going forward? If you get a franchise quarterback, you most likely were going to have to trade, I would think, Cortland Sutton, Pat Surtain, maybe one of them, if you're going to jump up that far. If not, you're going to bind yourself to trading away the future draft picks, first round picks, high first round picks, in all honesty, second round picks, and then you're kind of stuck with the same roster as well. So all those things are things to consider with the Denver Broncos, things they have to consider when they're talking over these sort of deals, these sort of plans with not only them within themselves, but with other teams. In all honesty, I'll say it again, it seems to be the safest, most boring answer, maybe for most people, but trading down at this point doesn't seem like the worst idea for the Denver Broncos. I know their fans, and I know people around the league just want to see them competitive, successful, because of all of the time that they've invested in Russell Wilson, paying him all that money, not to mention all the money they're paying Sean Payton as well to coach their team and bring him back into the NFL. That was a huge decision that's not really working out for them because their team is worse now still. All of that has to be taken into consideration, and I just think, at times, the NFL is harsh enough, very humbling at times, that it makes you, I just think that they have to swallow their pride here a little bit and not make the most popular decision, but make the right decision and trade back, accumulate more draft picks, a later first round draft pick. Maybe you'll get something in the second round, maybe something in the third for that pick. They don't have a second round pick this year, so by trading back, you might get a later first, but you'll finally have a second round pick, which will be beneficial, because at this point, it's not one player that's really good is not going to substitute for all the missing pieces that you have on your roster, which is always the biggest point in trading back. Does that mean Sean Payton won't be there to see this sort of turnaround? He won't be there to draft the next franchise quarterback? It could end up like that. Most likely it will, because, with the amount of money that they're paying him and not seeing results, the coach is usually the first one to go. And if they don't have a quarterback or someone that they don't see to blame, he'll be the first one to go. And then you could really restart this whole thing with all this dead money, hopefully out of the books by next year, most likely 2 years. You'll have more draft capital. You won't invest too much of your future in this year's draft, even if you're feeling pressured to do so and find results and get everybody to stop talking about how bad of a contract you gave to Russell Wilson. All that stuff really doesn't matter if you're looking out for the best of the organization. And quite honestly, it's not really, you don't want to call it tanking if you're the Broncos, but at what point do you look at this team and think, how much are we going to get out of next season? Should we just start planning for the next 2 years after all this dead money is away? Because you don't really have too many options other than that, I feel like, if you're talking realistically with the talent that they have. How much better can they get with or without Sean Payton? With everybody else being so good, especially in the AFC. The AFC is, as a conference, it's just stacked top to bottom. All the teams in there can give any team in the AFC a run for their money. And I just think the Broncos are probably going to have the first pick next year, the way that this is all constructed. And with that being said, it's not like they could turn this around right now. It's looking promising down the line with a potential first-round pick next year if you don't trade it all the way this year. And with that, I think the Broncos can have something to look forward to, but I haven't seen a situation like this with Denver and the quality that they have and so little options to fix it, to really think of another option instead of just throwing this. You don't want to throw the season away, but you just want to limit your expectations is the best way to say it. You want to limit your expectations this year, accept that you might come last in the division, have the first round pick next year. It looks bad. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but at least you'll have options down the line. There will be a light at the end of the tunnel if they take this path, because of how quiet this offseason is and how now they're paying for all the decisions that they've made. It's turned out like this. You hate to see a team be so bad when all the other teams are starting to really get better. Even the Carolina Panthers have gotten better with the additions to their O-line. Bryce Young is still there with potential. With new coach Dave Canales coming in, they feel really good about unlocking that potential. They've gotten better. They trade for Deontay Johnson, bringing in another weapon for Bryce Young. They've been able to do that after so many years of being bad and not really producing anything out there on the field. They've kind of been compensated for it now, waiting out their time and being patient. Now we could look at their team and be like, oh, there's something there with Deontay, Adam Thielen, Bryce Young. You can give him a pass for his first year. They've upgraded the offensive line. That's where the Broncos hope to get to, because in all honesty, I don't really see them turning it around any quicker than the Panthers do at this point, because of all the circumstances that I said. It's looking dreary for the Broncos right now, but I'd be surprised if they were able to pull off a trade or something to prove me wrong. That's unfortunately the realization I think that they have to get to, and we're going to have to see when and if Sean Payton sticks around and all that stuff like that. But that's where they stand right now. That's a closer look of what the Broncos are sort of facing right now at this point, and how long will it take them to get out of it? We shall see. But we'll move on from that. We'll move into the second break on today's episode. More on the other side on J.J.McCarthy and maybe getting drafted second overall over guys like Jaden Daniels, Drake May. I'll have all the information on that. Plus, Dak Prescott and the Cowboys in the news more this time, with Dak potentially playing out his last year of his contract this upcoming season, and how that could affect them and how that could look further down the line. So don't go anywhere. All that stuff is coming up next on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Back here on the show, the second half of the show starting up right now. And before I get into this topic I wanted to talk about, I want to remind you guys, like I did at the start of the show, if you have any questions, any comments you want to make during this live show, to use the tip and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net. By doing that, I'm able to see your question right away, and I'm able to answer it on air over here to my right in the chat box. It's more fun when it's interactive, more engaging with you guys, so use that tip and donations link again, gsmcpodcast.net, with any of your questions. It's a massive help, like I said before, and we always thank you guys immensely when you guys are able to do that with any of your questions. Now, back to the topic. New topic. One of the reasons why I love the NFL draft is because you have so many options, so many stories, rumors that really, when you see them, are believable. You look at something and you think, it looks crazy in the moment, and then you start thinking, oh, maybe not. Maybe if they do this, this and that, or this team moves here or there, it's looking a lot more promising. And the latest thing that I thought was pretty interesting, pretty fascinating when you look at it deeper, is the interest that the Commanders might reportedly have in J.J.McCarthy at the number 2 pick, more so or not. It's fascinating, obviously, because it's the number 2 pick, and for the longest time, it's been Jaden Daniels after Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is going number 1 regardless of anything, and then it's Jaden Daniels or Drake May, and that was really it. Now, this is really the first time I've seen anybody report on this other alternative to Jaden Daniels, because one, Jaden Daniels is the Heisman winner, and usually when you win the Heisman as a quarterback, you're mostly penciled in for that number 1 or number 2 pick, and it's hard, if I was a GM, a coach, or anybody making this decision, to look at the Heisman winner and think, I think I'll take the other guy. At this point, you do see some support for that other option because of how much steam and how much traction the J.J. McCarthy bandwagon has grown to at this point of the season. It helped a lot that he won, obviously, the national championship. He was on a juggernaut of a team there in Michigan. Then, heading into the Combine, he participated unlike some of the other guys, and he put on a great show at the Combine, made some good throws, looked very sharp and accurate, so that helped his case. Then you get to his pro day, and he made some great throws, penciled in some of the things that people had doubts about. He checked off all those boxes, made some very entertaining, crazy throws. The biggest one, the most notable one, was the one when he rolled out and turned around on his right shoulder and just chucked it about 70 yards down the field to Blake Corum. That gained all the attention, all the oohs and ahs of the crowd, and growing this fan base that J.J. McCarthy now has in the NFL. I liked him. I was on that bandwagon for a while. I'm probably still on that bandwagon, but to draft the number 2, I think, is where I jump off the train and think that you really have to commit and really think about taking him at number 2 over Jaden Daniels, because not only of how talented these two guys are, but because of what it could mean, how it fits into the system. On that point, I think both of them, regardless of if it's Cliff Kingsbury calling the plays in Washington or they take JJ there or Jaden, I think he'll be fine in either system, whichever quarterback is drafted there. But with all this stirring up recently after the NFL owners meeting, I should point out, at that meeting, there's reporters there, there's networks there asking a bunch of questions, and Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network summed it up in all of the talks and conversations that he's had with executives, and he said, when I've had conversations here with executives from other teams who know Adam Peters well, the Commanders general manager. They know the situation well. The most popular answer for what they do at number 2 is J.J.McCarthy. That stirred everything up. That's where I saw this, and I started thinking, is it really that crazy? Because, one, if you're the Commanders, you're trying to turn the situation around, obviously, right? They've made some pretty aggressive moves in the offseason, bringing in a ton of players to help their O-line, to help their defense. A lot of former Cowboys because of the connection there to Dan Quinn. They've already been very proactive and very active and aggressive in trying to improve this team, taking some pretty surprising decisions. So, in doing so, that gives me more reason to believe that they wouldn't be shy about doing a move like this. Adam Peters has shown to be very aggressive already, like I mentioned there, and Dan Quinn has said that he's very fortunate to have Adam Peters alongside him to not lead this, but have some experience in trying to build this new team. And it's interesting, too, with Adam Peters, and I'm mentioning this, similar situation, very weird that it's happened like this again, when Adam Peters was the assistant general manager in San Francisco with the 49ers in 2021. Very strange situation, eerily the same as it is right now. They were connected, if you remember, to Mac Jones. A lot of rumors back then when they had that pick said that they were going to trade up and get Mac Jones, get this more sort of conservative, traditional quarterback. The biggest thing is I'm saying Mac Jones is more comparable to J.J.McCarthy. So the similarity is there already. The rumors swirled up again then, and they were saying they were going to use a high draft pick to draft J.J. McCarthy and surprise everybody, or I should say draft Mac Jones and surprise everybody, like this rumor is suggesting now. But they ended up going with the traditional thing, drafting Trey Lance instead, the more athletic, X-factor, extending plays type of quarterback that Jaden Daniels is now. You saw the connections back then with the two quarterbacks, how they really built up all this team, but it was all just for show in the end. I'm not saying it's the same thing now. You know, it could be the same thing. They could be stirring up the pot again just to freak other teams out, get them to move out or affect how the draft lays out. Or, because it's so similar and because it is the same scenario, basically, people will think, oh, they're just going to do the same thing as they are in 2021. The favorite is still Jaden Daniels, like Mike Eberflus suggested and what he reported that other teams were saying. They still believe Washington is closing in on Jaden Daniels. Other teams can believe that and think it's the same thing as 2021. You know, they're going to draft Jaden Daniels. And then they could this time have them where they want them in the palm of their hands and take J.J. McCarthy. And then at that point, if you're the other teams and you're thrown all out of whack because they did the opposite of what they did in 2021, it changes everything. It messes up a bunch of game plans. So, one, I think it's brilliant. I think it's awesome how Adam Peters is getting some people to truly believe that it is a question, I think as it should be, with the draft and how people speculate, oh, what is this team going to do? Where are they going to go with this pick? Once it's all set, especially at the top, everyone knows it's Caleb, Jaden, and then Drake, May, and then Marvin Harrison. For the longest time, it's been those four. Now, throwing in a curveball there, you do get some action. You do get some reaction from other teams that might see this, truly believe it, and change some things in your favor. For Washington, they might get a crazy offer if other teams believe that they're going to draft J.J. McCarthy that high. They might get a crazy offer from somebody that really wants JJ, and the Commanders could trade back and then just trade back up again to the third pick or the fourth pick and get another quarterback that they have their eye on. But they'll end up being a bigger winner because they were able to manipulate the situation and get other people to really think that they're going to draft JJ and get a bigger haul than they were already in store for. So I think that's awesome for them to do. It could be true. Who knows? They could take JJ if they really like him. I'm not opposed to that. Some people have JJ as their best quarterback, the second best quarterback. I have him as my third, but I don't see it too far out of the realm of possibility for the Commanders to do this. Does that mean that whoever they draft, JJ, would be a better fit than Jaden in the Cliff Kingsbury offense? I don't think it makes too much of a difference. If a guy's good, he's good. He'll be great with any coordinator or system. I do hold these guys both up to the highest standard because I think it is close between all these guys, JJ, Jaden, and Caleb. But, it's been right now the most obvious thing that Jaden gets picked. And up till now, Washington hasn't really been mentioned in too many trade scenarios. It's all been around the Cardinals and the Chargers, the Patriots even. Those two picks have really just been settled already. People aren't even entertaining it. Again, it stirs the pot up a little bit more if people really believe he's going to take JJ, to now start calling the Commanders more and more and offering them these things that they weren't even thinking were going to be available. Now, with them doing this, I think it's great. It makes it more interesting, and it makes it more fun, in all honesty, with how this is all developing. And I think it's only going to get bigger because, today actually, on the time of recording this, it was the LSU Pro Day, and Jaden Daniels threw there, but he didn't increase his chances with the athletic training. He chose not to do that in front of other people. Similarly to Caleb at the Combine and Marvin Harrison not participating in his pro day, Jaden Daniels at least threw, but he wasn't doing any athletic training. He wasn't running the 40 or the broad jump, the vertical jump. He did none of that, and he didn't hurt his case, but I think he could have grown more. Now with this, JJ's done everything these teams have wanted him to. He's blown everybody out of the water in their meetings. I think it's starting to grow more and more with people jumping on the JJ fan base, the JJ train. It's really interesting to see how this will play out. JJ, I think, met with the Commanders already before his pro day with the New York Giants as well. He has other meetings scheduled. It's all still in the works right now. We're not going to see anything really develop, I think, probably for a few weeks, but this story's thrown out there now to try and make a loop. A bunch of reports have said that everyone is still trying to figure out what Washington is going to do. I think Gerard Mayo even said it as well. You know what the Bears are doing. Everybody in the draft is trying to figure out what the Commanders will do. And this is only going to add more to that, more fuel to the fire, and keep everybody on their toes. Like I mentioned, it's great negotiating, manipulating the situation in their favor by Adam Peters. With his time spent at the 49ers, you can see why they were successful there. He's bringing that over to Washington. Under Dan Quinn, I think he's going to have a great tenure there. He did some great things in Dallas. Even if he doesn't call the offense, defensively, you have all the confidence in the world because he's been with a successful Cowboys team. It's all adding up to a great recipe for success. As much as I was on the Bears for saying how much I liked what they did to help Caleb bring him in and how much confidence I had in them, I might have just the same, definitely the same, might have more confidence in the Commanders with how they're really attacking this offseason and changing everything to fit their plan and manipulate everything to their favor. I love what they're doing, and I can't wait to see what happens with that number 2 overall pick in this year's NFL draft. But I'll leave that there. In the meantime, we're going to go to the last break of the show, and on the other side, I'm going to talk more about the Dallas Cowboys and the contract situation with Dak Prescott and how a situation has already been resolved already, it seems. So stick around to that. Don't go anywhere. That's coming up right after this break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. To access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news, subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Thank you for joining me back here on the last segment of the show, wrapping it all up with more Dallas Cowboys talk, a very popular topic, as is every offseason, it seems like. Still on discussing their quarterback right now, Dak Prescott. He's on the last year of his deal, and he is set to be a free agent in 2025, so the discussion has been around when are the Cowboys going to extend him. They gave him a new contract a few years ago. It was a 4-year, $160 million deal in 2021. Now he's on the last few years of that. And everyone's trying to figure out how to make the Cowboys better, continue their success going forward. No one is thinking that that can happen without Dak Prescott. As bad as people like to clown on them for being bad in the playoffs, and Dak has a 2-5 record in the playoffs, you can't really argue the point that they're going to get better by just letting Dak Prescott walk if they don't have a compatible, ready option on their team already. That isn't logical to say, but for the Cowboys, they haven't really had any talks thus far about an extension for him. And a few days ago, Ian Rappaport tweeted that he said that the Cowboys and quarterback Dak Prescott have a mutual understanding of his contract situation, sources say, with no offers from Dallas despite being in a contract year, no indication a deal is coming. He also replied to that tweet and he said it clears the path for Dak Prescott to test free agency in 2025. And just earlier today, when I saw more people talk about it on the Pat McAfee show, Adam Schefter gave his insight on it, and he said if he leaves after this year, the dead money cap charge will be $95 million that they'll have to spread out. You know, if you thought Russell Wilson's was bad, $95 million in dead cap money would be the record and would just really kill any sort of talk about playoffs and getting better, performing in the regular season and trying to perform in the playoffs. If you have that, and no quarterback, I don't know where you look to try and improve after that. Schefter also said that there wouldn't be a shortage of suitors for Dak Prescott either. He said it's even harder for Dak. It would make it even harder for the Cowboys to re-sign him next year if they're reluctant to do anything this year, like Ian Rappaport also reported. And with that being said, he likened it to the situation we've seen already in this free agency with Kirk Cousins. He would be the Kirk Cousins essentially of next year's free agency period. A lot of teams would be looking to add him. And to all the reports coming out, the Cowboys, very un-Cowboys-like, responded to this pretty publicly through their website employee, Nick Harris. And he replied to Rappaport's tweet. He said, per the team, Dak Prescott and the Cowboys have had extension discussions, but it isn't of a pressurized situation for either of them at this point. So more of the same of what Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones have been saying recently as well. They've acknowledged that Dak and them, it would be beneficial to engage in these talks and have these conversations, which they have, but again, they keep stressing that they don't really see it as a must-do right now. And it's contrasting, again, with this whole thing of being all in and being all in and locked and loaded on the season, another term he used as well. Jerry Jones said, "We are who we are, locked and loaded for this year." That could be, the crazy thing is that's truly what he believes, and not what this situation is painting out to be at all, with everything that they're saying about being all in and stuff like that. You thought that they were going to get this done, move forward, sign players, get better, they're all in on this core group of guys and trying to get them extended and trying to see further success down the line. And now, all in must have been meant like I thought it meant back when they lost against the Green Bay Packers in the playoffs. All in, to me, meant, this is the last chance for Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott. Everything is going to be put in place for them this year, and if they don't perform, it's done for them. Mike McCarthy is in the last year of his contract as well, and that's how I interpreted it when he said something like this. I thought, this is their last chance, and if not, we're going to just move on without them. A lot of people thought it was keeping this core group of guys because Dak has been their quarterback now for a long time, and they've wanted to have success with him, but it hasn't really panned out for him. He's 2-5 in the playoffs. Even after coming off one of his best regular seasons, arguably his best in his career, he led the NFL with 36 touchdown passes, nearly a 70% completion percentage, and had over 4,500 yards passing and only 9 interceptions. At 30 years old, in the prime, a little bit past the midpoint of his prime, if you want to argue that, he's still performing. He's still a top, I could definitely give you top 10 for sure quarterbacks right now for Dak Prescott. He's not as bad as people want to paint him out to be. I just think sometimes there do come these moments where either he doesn't perform or some other players don't step up in the biggest moments. As much as people want to dump on Dak Prescott for playing badly in games, and it is elevated more because he is the quarterback and so much is put on the quarterback, and they are such a big determinant in how these games turn out. I don't think Micah Parsons has stepped up in a playoff game so much that people just fail to acknowledge that he hasn't also lived up to that star status that he has earned in the regular season, but in the playoffs, we haven't seen him have a monster game, impact the game really in any way. And I won't mention CD because he's directly correlated with how well Dak does, and Dak hasn't done well, so in theory, CD's not going to do great because he is dependent on Dak Prescott to play really well, for him to do really well. And with this whole contract situation now looking like they're just going to play it out and essentially move on, I don't see them trying to negotiate again next offseason and offering the amount of money that Dak is looking for because they have contract negotiations coming up with Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb. And this was brought to my attention before. If you were to rank them in terms of importance, Dak, unfortunately for him, would be the last one on that list. The Cowboys, Jerry Jones, would want to sign Micah Parsons and give him the contract that he wants in order to stay in Dallas. Same goes for CeeDee Lamb. He's proven to be a very great player in that Cowboys team, really showing that he could succeed with any quarterback that you throw in there. So the odd man out would have to be Dak Prescott because of his salary cap charge, and Dak is owed $55 million in 2024, and I mentioned the dead cap hit after he leaves next season. All of that are just reasons really not to keep him around, and if you aren't to keep him around, and really this is their last opportunity, I've been saying this for a while now, I've wanted to see some action and consequences come from the Dallas Cowboys. The way that they were talking about it, it doesn't seem like they were going in that way. But now, this is the first action I've seen from the Cowboys in showing me that they really want to change something about this team. They're really putting hard limitations on performance, and if it doesn't happen this year, then some of you guys have to leave. Some of you guys aren't living up to this. It's been long enough. Some of you guys have to move on because we're trying to see something different. And the guy that you can give up is Dak because you have all the other talent around him. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy to find a replacement for Dak to play at his level. Definitely not in the regular season, but you have to do something. I've been saying that they have to do something to change this because going into season after season and expecting the same thing with no free agents coming in, no real moves, no trades happening, to think you guys are going to end up anywhere different, it's crazy. And we might be seeing a change now going forward with the Dallas Cowboys. And, this leads you to believe also with the lack of negotiations and the lack of movement with Dak Prescott, could this be a reason why the Cowboys haven't really been active in free agency? They've been engaged with Dak Prescott in contract negotiations, and because it hasn't really worked out, they haven't convinced Dak to restructure his contract thus far or agree to a lower salary so far in free agency. Could that be a reason why it's holding them back from signing other players? You don't know, but you can speculate and sort of connect the dots there. If Dak's really holding firm on a number that he wants in negotiations, they're not able to bring down his price tag. They can't have more money to sign these other free agents because of that. That's something to bring up. And it's really a lack of clarity from Jerry Jones as well to make it seem that it is holding them back. And he's being so careful with his words and saying phrases like we're all in, we are who we are, we're locked and loaded for this year. That lack of clarity is just really mudding these waters more. You don't really know where it's going after this point, but with Dak not really expecting a contract extension, the Cowboys being reported to not give that to him at least this offseason, it really makes you think now, what's the plan? We never really thought that Dak wasn't going to be a Dallas Cowboy for life. And what's funny about this is, when I thought about this, is with Dak and Brock Purdy is also due. He's eligible for a contract extension next offseason. I thought it would be the funniest thing ever if next season, or 2 seasons actually, really, when Brock Purdy is a free agent and Dak is also a free agent, wouldn't it be crazy that they just switch teams and Dak goes to the 49ers and Brock Purdy is signed with the Dallas Cowboys? I thought that just popped into my head a few hours ago, and I thought that would be the craziest thing to see because of the connection that those two teams have had and just how weird it would just be to see them switch teams like that. But it's nothing short of what the NFL can provide you at times. And now with Dak Prescott really being on this hot seat, I guess you could say, same with Mike McCarthy, where does that affect him going into this season? With no contract extension, does that affect how he views this team? How much effort does he want to put in? I shouldn't say effort because Dak hasn't shown to be that kind of person to not try, but how it does affect a person in some way when your team is reluctant to give you this contract that you think you're valued at, for them to not give it to you right away, especially playing the quarterback position. He's obviously knows how the record looks and how unsuccessful they've been in the playoffs, but it does hit you a little bit harder, I would think, when basically your team is saying that they don't value you as you value yourself, your play thus far. He is a good quarterback, so that will, I think, have some effect on something that has to affect Dak Prescott in some way. Maybe his relationship gets a bit toxic with Jerry Jones. I don't think so much his teammate, but with just the organization. That's something to monitor over the course of the season, how that affects them. And actions will be taken. Actions have already begun to have been put into effect. It all just determines now on what's going to happen now, who's going to react wrong, who's going to react and motivate themselves with this to play better. That could also happen. That could go into this year and play even better than he did last year and prove everybody that he deserves this contract. I don't know how that'll turn out because this is still the Cowboys and they haven't given you reason to prove that they can make it past the first or second round of the playoffs. But, that's all on the table. It's a big development now with this reluctancy to give Dak an extension, at least for this offseason, how Ian Rappaport reported it. So that's a big development. We'll see if the Cowboys add anybody else in free agency, but that's how it all stands right now. It looks like the Cowboys and Dak Prescott are drifting further and further away from each other. Heading into this pivotal part of the season with the draft, it's something to monitor for sure as it all develops. But that will do it for me on today's episode. That is all the time I will have. And as always, remember to like, subscribe, and follow the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Make sure to also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for more of the network's content outside of sports or other sports channels. If you want to see more of me and this content on this show, check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the Podcast Network channel on YouTube for all other live shows that are fully recorded and are on there if you want to check those out. YouTube shorts that are posted daily, or every weekday I should say, as well as individual segment videos that are on there if you missed a segment or want to go back and rewatch one that you really enjoyed. All those are on there on the channels as well. Tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more discussions, speculations, and conversations around the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and hopefully I would love to see you guys all tomorrow.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn.